Hello everyone, I wanted to take this opportunity to show you how to operate a microscope using this virtual microscope demonstration. So the microscope that you're looking at right now is just like the one we have in our classes, however it's a little bit of a step above. This is a binocular microscope, and meaning that it has two eyepieces. Ours is only a monocular one, having one eyepiece. This microscope also has what we call a mechanical stage, meaning that instead of us trying to move the slide back and forth with our own hands, you have some knobs here that will actually move the specimen up, down, left, right, without having to use your fingers and having to overcompensate trying to move the slide. And I'll show you just how much easier that's going to be in a second. So one of the first things you want to do when you go to use your microscopes is you always want to make sure the stage is all the way down. So in this demonstration, this is going to be the coarse adjustment knob, and the smaller one here attached directly to it is the fine adjustment. So by hitting these arrows here, I can move the stage up or I can move the stage down. Right now I want it all the way down, away from the objective lenses here. And you can see that we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 objective lenses on this revolving nose piece. So I want to have the 4x magnification facing down, which is our scanning objective lens. That always should be face down. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the power on down below. So I'm going to hit the power switch. Alright, here is our diaphragm right here that we can use by pulling this little beam this way or that way, controlling the iris that allows a certain amount of light from the illuminator down here through the specimen. Alright, next I want to do is there are 4 specimens over here. I'm just going to show you how to do the first one, which is the letter E. Every science classroom always begins with the letter E because it's simple to see how the image is going to change compared to how you put it here on the stage versus how you view it through the eyepiece, and we're going to call that the field of view. So I'm going to take the letter E slide, and I'm going to bring it down here to the stage. And before I do anything else, before I even look through the eyepiece, I want to make sure that the specimen, which again is just the letter E here, is actually above the little opening where the light is going to come up through it. So I'm going to use the mechanical stage knobs here. You would have to use just your hands and move the slide so the specimen is right above the opening. But here, I'm going to use these adjustment knobs. I'm going to bring it down. I can see the letter E now is above the opening. Not quite center, but now it is there. So I have my microscope on. Alright, I have the scanning power facing down. My platform or stage was all the way down. What I can do now is I can move with the coarse adjustment. I can bring the stage all the way up. Alright, that's not going to be in focus yet. But now once I start to look through the eyepiece, such as this, I'm going to switch our view. With a binocular microscope, I don't want to have, if you try to look through both at the same time, and they're not the correct distance, because everyone's eyes are a little bit further apart or closer together than other people's are, I want to adjust this so the 2 circles will overlap. That's not going to give me like tunnel vision then when I'm trying to look through the microscope. If we just had a monocular one, a lot of times people will just close one eye and look through with just one eye. But here, when you have 2 eyepieces, you want to make sure that they adjust so you're viewing just one single field of view, and you're not going to get this kind of blurry vision. So I cannot see anything in the field of view right now because I'm not fully focused. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm now going to just bring the coarse adjustment. I'm going to start to turn the knob since I've already maxed it out to the top position. If I just start pulling it away, oh, you see how it went away? Now I have my E in focus, but it's not perfect right now. If I go again another one up, you see how it disappears? Bring it back in focus. I can now also, at the same time, even though generally you don't have to, if the specimen, in this case the letter E, is still a little bit out of focus, I can try to use the fine adjustment to see if that does anything. So right now I'm clicking down or up, and I don't see much of a change. Here's my diaphragm. I can try to change that and see if I have any improvement. Oh, I do, right? As I increase the amount of light, if I'm all the way down right now, it's hard to see, but if I bring it up, say right about there is where I think it looks the best. I'll almost max out the amount of light. Now, here's one of the key mistakes that a lot of people do. All right, before you move on to a higher power objective, you want to make sure that this letter E is actually centered in your field of view. So again, your field of view is everything that you can see when looking through the microscope. So to show you, if I were now to change to the next low power, 10x, I'm just going to kind of click that so it's facing down. You see how your specimen disappeared? All right. A lot of you in class would have such difficulty with this because you would just forget that you should center it before you move to a higher objective. So I'm going to go back to scanning power, so the 4 is facing down. And now I'm going to take the time to center the E. Now, one thing to take note of is in your field of view, if you want to move the specimen down, you're actually on the stage moving the slide up or away from you. If you wanted to move this specimen to the left, all right, in your field of view, you actually have to move the slide to the right because the image is getting inverted. All right, it's getting flipped upside down and spun around on its way to your eye. So if you were moving the slide by hand, it's always going to be the opposite direction. All right, so again, if I want to move this up in my field of view, like I'm doing now with this knob, what you're actually doing is you're moving the slide down actually towards you. All right, so it's always going to be the opposite direction. So I want to get it centered first. All right, I'm going to use that red circle to kind of center me in there. So I think I'm pretty good right now. Right about there is where the red circle is because I'm going to focus on that opening between the letter A. Now again, you could see when this letter E was placed on the stage, right now, if I looked at the letter E, I could read it like a normal sentence. It's right side up. But when you look through the eyepiece here, see how it's flipped upside down and then spun around? It's inverted. All right, so that's one thing you got to take note of always. It's always the opposite directions based on how it's actually oriented on the stage. All right, so I'm going to now, so I have it centered. I'm going to switch to low power, so it's a 10x. All right, I'm pretty much perfectly centered here. You don't want to touch the coarse adjustment knob now. If I do, you see how it warns me? All right, so I'm going to say no, because if you did that, the distance between the slide and the objective lens is starting to get shorter and shorter. So if you started to play with the coarse adjustment knob, you could actually impact the objective lens to the slide, break the slide, and damage the objective lens. That's going to cost you a couple $100 possibly to replace. So once you get to low power or high power, you only want to really use the fine adjustment knob now. And what that's going to do is it's going to sharpen your image. See what I'm doing there? Look how much darker that looked right there. Boom. Right about there is perfect. I can play with my lighting to see if it improves. Definitely does not improve. So I'm pretty much right about there. Almost maxed out with the light, but not quite there yet. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to make sure I'm centered. I'm going to keep that red dot there in its center. Maybe move it over right about there. So now we're ready to go to high power, which is going to be the 40x objective. I'm going to point that down. See how I zoomed in there? Still looking pretty good. Let me play with the fine adjustment, which is really, again, just sharpening the image, making it look crisper. All right, so look how close I am. That is where our microscopes in the classroom would stop. All right, right now we have the 40x objective. Our eyepieces are 10x. So 40 times 10, we would be at 400 times or 400x total magnification value right now. Now, what I want you to notice is this. If I come back out, or down, I should say, the scanning power, I can see the whole letter E, right? As well as a lot more of the slide. Right now, I have a very large field of view because I can see a huge section of the slide. But if I go back to low power, we're zooming in on the E, right? The image looks like it's getting bigger, but technically our field of view, which is the amount of the slide that we can see, is actually decreasing. So as you increase in magnification all the way up to high power, yes, you're seeing the closest, but technically your field of view, the amount of the slide that you can actually see, is always decreasing as you increase your magnification. Now, on this microscope, it also has a 100x lens. All right, that is generally one reserved for oil immersion. All right, if I were to click that right now, look how much closer I got, right? You can see now I'm looking right up at just one of the little individual black sections of the letter E. But when you do this, it doesn't show up too well in this microscope demonstration. But the objective lens would be just about touching that specimen right now. So to increase the magnification and make sure that it actually gets your images really clear, you would put a little drop of oil there, which would come in contact with the objective lens, and that would really sharpen up the image more so than just this fine adjustment would be doing at that point. But we would never do that in class right now, because at least the specimens that we're looking at, we don't need to go quite that high with magnification, plus the majority of our microscopes do not have an oil immersion lens. Alright, if you are now done drawing any diagrams of the image that you were looking at, or making any recordings in a lab setting, when you're finished, you now want to clean your microscope off. So what I would do is, alright, if I switch views, I'm going to first change the objective back to scanning power. So make sure the number 4 is facing down. And then at that point, I have a much larger opening between the slide and the objective lens. I can bring the stage all the way down. And then in this instance, I can then just remove the slide. If this was a slide that I prepared with something that was living on it, or anything like living cells, like maybe even from your cheek, I would then want to clean that slide off, obviously, with soap and water, alcohol, disinfect it before you go ahead and use it any further. At that point, if I was using anything that could be a contaminant, I would also want to clean my microscope. I would want to use lens paper to clean the objective lenses or the eyepieces. And then any parts of the stage or any other parts of the microscope that are obviously not a lens, you can use some alcohol and Kim wipes. The one little tiny looking, they kind of look like tissue paper coming out of a white and green box that we discussed in our previous portion of our lab as well as in class. Alright, so now on your own, I'm going to have you look at the 3 remaining slides. Onion root tip, a bacterial capsule, so you're going to be looking at some bacterial cells, as well as what a cheek smear slide would look like if you prepared that in the classroom. Alright, thank you very much for listening.